Hello everybody, Dr. Shadi Ireifej here, Chief of Specialty, Board Certified Staff Surgeon, and part owner of TrueCare for Pets, Studio City, Los Angeles, California, 24-hour, 7-day a week, especially an emergency hospital for all of your dog and cat needs, and maybe some other species. I'm joined here today with my surgery technicians, Jay and Lindsay.
Hi.
Hi.
And so we're going to follow up this podcast, the previous one that started off with how to take care of your geriatric dog and cat. We're going to focus on this one on how to tell when it's time to put your pet to sleep, euthanize your pet, and let them go because of age-related diseases. So we're going to give you some perspective from my point of view as far as the medical side, and of course Jay and Lindsay will jump in as far as the pet owner side of things, and we'll compare and contrast ideas and thoughts. This is obviously an ongoing topic, very difficult for many pet owners, very difficult for many veterinarians, and over time as I progress in my career, it gets a little bit more simplified as far as this discussion goes with pet owners. But it's, again, regardless of that, it's never an easy topic to discuss. But of course, it's inevitable because for the majority of the times, you're going to end up acquiring a pet that's probably going to pass away before you pass away. This is something you're going to have to deal with, whether it's dog or cat, especially if you're into adopting where you don't know their age, or if you're into adopting older pets. It's a big deal, and you're going to be going through it regardless whether you like it or not. So we'll talk about how you know when it's time. And so I can start off with sort of the medical aspect of this, where sometimes if you have a pet that has a chronic disease, let's say they're diabetic, or they have a heart condition, or they have arthritis, over time, these conditions maybe become less and less manageable, more difficult for your veterinarian to help you treat these conditions. And so with chronic disease, if you get to the point where there are sequelae to those diseases, or your veterinarian is running out of options, then I'd offer the solution of sending you referring you over to a specialist, maybe internal medicine specialist or a surgeon. It just depends on what the condition is. And then maybe they'll have some novel ideas that you can consider to give your older pet quality of life. But let's say you go through all of this already and the options are limited now. There's nothing else really you can do. Well, in that case, I would say that if you have a pet that has a chronic disease process that's no longer manageable, either because their glucose levels are off, or because they can't see anymore, or they can't even walk anymore, or they have fecal or urinary incontinence, they're peeing and pooping everywhere in the house, then those are probably pretty clear examples that maybe at this point your pet it's time. The quality of life for your pet is not what it used to be. That's obvious. And of course, it's also affecting you and your family's quality of life as well. You don't want to constantly come home to pee and poop everywhere, or be afraid that your pet is going to be stuck in a room and can't figure their way out, and they haven't drank or eaten all day because they can't figure things out. Lots of different sad examples of this. And so I think that if your pet, dog or cat, has disease, and the disease has progressed to an unmanageable level, then that's pretty straightforward. That at that point it's considered a quality of life issue, and maybe it's time to make the big decision. And then I would have a second category that's separate from disease. So your pet doesn't have any sort of chronic disease, it's just getting older. And over time, you're like, what do I do? They seem fine overall. They're still eating and drinking. They kind of wag their tail when I come home. They sort of ignore me a little bit more than usual, but it's not bad. Then I would ask you this question. Is there anything that your pet is currently not doing that they used to love doing? And it could be something as simple as eating. They used to love food, now they're not really eating much anymore. Or they used to love swimming or going for walks, and they don't really want to do that anymore. Because at some point, it's going to come down to quality of life from your perspective. You have to decide whether or not your pet's happy, right? That's the reason why this is so difficult, is you have to personify what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And so I would argue that if there's some big activity that your pet used to love to do, that used to be the reason why they woke up in the morning, was to do this thing with you, go on a hike, go for a swim, or something as simple as like they love their food, they love their treats. They used to play with my kids more. They used to what have you, and it's becoming a chronic issue, and every day it's getting worse and worse and worse. Then I'd say that's when it's time to think about euthanasia, because really at the end of the day, the quality of life of your pet is probably going to be defined by your interpretation of what your pet is doing. And so if you are seeing your pet not performing those activities that they used to literally live for, then maybe that's a sign that now your pet is not enjoying life anymore, and you've got to make the big decision as far as euthanizing or not. And so I would divide this discussion into two different categories just to summarize, and we'll have Jay and Lindsay take over here. The first aspect of it is your pet declining because of disease, or is your pet declining because of a lack of interest in what they used to love? And I think those are two pretty broad categories that encompass the majority of the times you're going to be making this decision for your pet.
So I would clarify your second category to say that pet that has lost interest in things has been to the vet and been checked out for treatable things like arthritis. Like, yeah, your dog doesn't want to go swimming anymore, but that's because it hurts to stand. So we're saying that you've exhausted those, you've treated those if they're applicable, and now your pet is just unhappy or not able to do the things it loves. Not just he's old and so I'm going to put him down. Because we do get clients that bring pets in and want them put down simply because they're old and they want to go get a puppy or, whatever from the shelter. So, or purchase one, whatever. So that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you've exhausted those things. There's nothing treatable, and now your pet's just not doing the things it loves anymore.
Yeah, euthanasia is not supposed to be an easy exit to a pet that can be treated with other regimens, whether it's medications or physical therapy or acupuncture or herbal supplements or anything else. It's meant to be you've exhausted all of your options. Because keep in mind, euthanasia, as routine as it may be and as common as it is, it's not something that we're advocating is your first go-to.
Yeah.
It's meant to be your last resort. You're ending a pet's life. That should be a big deal to you. And so this conversation is based on exactly what Lindsay said. You've already gone through the testing. You've had your veterinarian screen for whatever disease, tried all their options. You've seen a specialist maybe for other ideas, and you've exhausted all those options. And there's no other manageable solution to this other than your pet is no longer enjoying life.
So I think that, and everyone has different life views, different religious views, but I think that euthanasia is truly a gift that we get to give these pets. We don't get to give it to our own family members. We have to watch people suffer until they take their last breath, but that is not the case with animals, and we do have the ability to give them the gift of ending their suffering. And I think that is something that is individual to every person and can be very hard to grapple with a decision. And I had this conversation with an owner just a couple days ago because her dog was very, very ill, and she came to visit thinking it was time to put the dog to sleep because it had been hospitalized, and the dog saw her and just lost its mind. It got excited, it wagged its tail, it couldn't stand, but it tried, and she had tears in her eyes, and she's like, I can't do this. This dog is happy to see me, and he loves me, and I don't think I can do this. And what I told her and what I would tell any of you in a situation like that is be grateful that that's your pet's last moment. Be grateful that your pet is happy and enjoying your presence and going to have a lasting, beautiful final memory. And that's not something that we always get to give them. There's situations where the decision is made for you. Those are unavoidable. But if you have the ability to make this decision, even if your pet is wagging its tail and is happy to see you, that doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision to make.
Yeah, it's how you want to remember your pet too. Yeah, and how your pet remembers you. The euthanasia process. If anyone out there who's listening if you've not been through before, it's a very quick process. It's not some sort of ongoing thing. It's an injection or two. Within seconds, your pet passes away. So there's none of that hospice care you see with people where it sort of is ongoing, just goes on and on and on day by day, where your relative or your friend is suffering and you're seeing them just deteriorate, and they're watching you. The person who's passing away is watching you mourning over them. It's a nightmare. With dogs and cats, if you decide to pull the plug, so to speak, it's very quick. They're looking into your eyes, looking in theirs. The veterinarian gives an injection, they go to sleep, and you could walk away knowing that your pet's last memory was staring at you, thinking about how happy they are to have you there, how much they love you, and they can pass away with that thought in mind. And you can walk away with that same thought in mind, that you did the right thing at the right time. You didn't wait too long. You didn't do it too soon. You didn't wait too long, and your pet passed away with very happy memories, and you could walk away with very happy memories.
And for anyone that's listening to this that doesn't know how we euthanize pets, it is an overdose of an injectable anesthetic drug. So literally, they go under anesthesia, fall asleep, and then we give them so much that they don't wake up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so the veterinarian will put an IV catheter or get a vein access, which is just like any blood draw. It's nothing, and then inject them with this anesthetic. And so their heart stops immediately. And we listen to their heart after the injection is complete, make sure their heart is stopped, and that confirms they've passed away. Your pet will immediately kind of just go right to sleep. Their eyes will probably stay open. Sometimes the body will relax. They're going to pee or poop sometimes, but it's not like just some gruesome seizure-like activity. They relax, so things come out, and they'll take maybe a couple last breaths, which is purely nerve impulses, not them actually breathing. You might see some body twitches by their chest or abdomen area. Again, that's just nerves. But as long as their heart is stopped, then we know they've passed away, regardless of what nerve reflexes you're seeing thereafter. As long as their heart is stopped, we know they've passed away, they've moved on. And so you can be there for the entire process if you want to be, or you don't have to be. It's totally up to you what your comfort level is. You can visit their remains after the injection is given and we've confirmed they've passed away, or you can leave. Totally up to you what you want to do.
I think you bring up a good point because there was an article written by Dr. Andy Roark, I think is his name, about how detrimental it is to the pet to not have the owner there and how it breaks the heart of staff members to watch things like that. And I want people listening to this to realize that though that may be the opinions of some, I see nothing wrong with that. Everybody is different. Everybody has different triggers, different traumas in their lives, and maybe seeing your pet pass away is beyond what you can handle. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Myself, Jay, Dr. Ireifej, our entire staff will hug and love and kiss your pet through its final breath if it's something that you cannot be there for, and we do not pass judgment about that. And I don't think anyone should feel bad about their decision to not be present because they can't emotionally handle it.
Yep. I agree.
I've had a lot of people not in this field ask me about that. Oh, I saw this article, and do people really do that all the time? I can't believe they would do that. And I just think that it kind of put out there something that's not real. I totally get not being able to emotionally handle that and maybe the trauma it would cause you. And I'm happy to be there for your pet.
Absolutely. So let's say something horrible has happened to your pet while you're out of town and you can't make it into town for another day or two. Now the question is, do you have to be there for your pet, but you're making them their suffering prolonged until you get back into town, or can you just authorize it over the phone and not be here? And no one here at this facility, TrueCare for Pets, is ever going to think of you as some careless monster if you are not present. We understand it's unrealistic for you to come back earlier if you're a business trip or whatever. It's also unrealistic for you to keep your pet suffering for another day or two till you get back. So be fair to your pet. Realize that we're not judging anybody, and just make a decision based on all these factors. And we're going to do whatever. At the end of the day, we're going to do whatever you want to do, obviously. But if you're going to euthanize your pet, you're saying that decision. But you can't be around for another day or two. But you know your pet can't wait around another day or two. Then make a decision. Don't be present then, and we'll make the experience as peaceful and loving for your pet as possible. And now with technology being what it is, like Skyping and FaceTime and all this stuff, you can probably find creative ways to be present if you really want to be, but you physically can't be there. There's ways to do it. So think outside the box to arrange this type of ordeal, however you want to arrange it.
And I think that since we're talking about this subject, another great option that I'm actually a really big fan of is home euthanasia. There's lots of veterinarians now that will do home euthanasia. Your primary veterinarian for a fee may come to your house, but there are veterinarians that's all that they do is home euthanasia. And if you can afford it and it's something that you're into, I think it's fantastic for the pet's last memories to be of their home or their backyard or their favorite park versus the hospital. And that's not realistic for everyone in every situation, but if it's possible, you can afford it, you have the luxury of time to arrange it, I think it's a great way to have a pet pass.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of options. Whatever you feel, whatever your desire is, there probably is a service to foster that. So just to ask your veterinarian how to go about it, and they'll be happy to help you out.
So then I think the next part of this is who, if you're going to be present, who's present for the euthanasia.
Mhm.
And I really don't recommend children. And I also don't recommend young teenagers. It's just really hard on them. And obviously, you as a parent gets to make that decision, but it's not something that we as a hospital are prepared to deal with. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And if needed, our receptionists and the receptionist of whatever hospital you go to would be happy to sit with your toddler or, with your child, keep them entertained while this is happening so that they don't have to be in the room with you. I mean, obviously, if they're so young that they're not cognizant of what's going on, then that's different. They're in, I was going to say wheelchair, but that's not what those are called.
Stroller.
Stroller. If they're in a stroller.
They're in a stroller.
Then it's fine. But it can be quite the ordeal, and I've seen it be really, really bad with younger children because they don't have, emotional awareness to understand what's going on. They get really distraught. It's just a really bad situation. So really think hard about having your children.
So I will offer a different perspective on this. I have seen kids be involved where it wasn't a disaster, and it seems that I think my conclusion now over the years, I used to have Lindsay's thought as well, and then I sort of changed. And I think over the years, my thought has been this: you know your kid's best. So if you're the kind of parent that thinks, no, my kid needs to learn this is part of life and it's part of owning a pet, and they want to see through it to the end, then go for it. If you are at all hesitant about whether or not your child, no matter how age they are, however old they are, can't handle it, or it's going to be some sort of a heartfelt drama behind it, then you make a decision as to whether or not they should be around. How you handle your home life, I'm going to, as a veterinarian, I'm going to do whatever it is you want. If there's somebody in the room, just because I think they shouldn't be in there, doesn't mean that they shouldn't be in there. Your call. Your family, you decide. I've seen it go both ways. I've seen some kids that handle this stuff way better than some adults.
Yeah, but it's usually because they're not really understanding the process. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, we're never going to say no.
Yeah. Whoever wants to be there, can be there. But otherwise, be considerate of your child's age, maturity level, where they're at in life, and just it's a big decision. I'm not sure that lying to them that Fluffy went to a farm or something is the best option, but I don't know. You should try and maximize the level of truth and honesty that you would like to be addressed with as well.
Yeah.
So be as authentic as possible. So basically, you end up with just a recap here. You have an older pet. You see your veterinarian. Look for any other medical reasons or treatable reasons that can improve your pet's quality of life. You've exhausted all your options. You have a pet now that's just declining. They don't love life anymore, or their disease is out of hand, whichever scenario or a combination. And you decide it's time. You can contact your veterinarian. If you want and talk about different options, you can have the euthanasia performed at the veterinary hospital or at your house, depending on your area and who's offering the type of service. You can be present during the euthanasia or not. And then finally, patient remains. So the remains of your pet, you either can take the remains home. What you do with the remains at home is up to you to a certain degree, but you have to check with your local city regulations as far as burying your pet underground. Because
it's definitely illegal in most places. Yeah. But like you said, what you do is what you do, and just don't tell us. But just so you're welcome to do research on why. There are very, very valid reasons why it is illegal to bury your pet in the backyard. Mainly it has to do with contamination of drinking water and things like that as they decompose. But again, what you don't tell us, we can't do anything about. So there's always that.
So you have that option. Then you have the option of having private cremations. You can actually have your pet. We can actually send your pet to a crematory, and they can perform the cremation, send your pet's ashes back to you in an urn. And a lot of these companies are actually quite reputable, and so they offer even things like funerals, right? And you could be there
you can be present as they go into the fire.
So check that out if you're into that. If you want to into the incinerator, if you want to be part of that, you can. Yep.
I would say if you're a particular person, to do your research about this ahead of time, because the way that remains are handled is very different from company to company. You have mass cremation companies, depending on your area, that do private cremation, but they may not do it to the standard that you want, and that's not something you want to find out after. You may also elect general cremation and think you're sending your pet for general cremation, but they're going for rendering, things like that. So I highly recommend, if you know the end is near, to kind of do your research, because the hospital will accommodate whichever company you would like as the owner.
What's rendering?
That's how you get things like soaps and different products from animal parts.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people are unaware that their pet is going for rendering. So it's something to really do your research on. It has nothing to do with the veterinary hospital. The general cremation is general cremation. We pay for that service. But again, what happens to your pet after it leaves the building and is in the hands of whatever general crematory is beyond our control. So if you want to do your research and make sure that you're okay with the standard or level of care that is given to your deceased pet, do that ahead of time.
There's also aquamation, which is kind of a new environmental friendly process. Takes longer, but you get more ashes back as well.
Yeah, so for people that don't know about this, a lot of companies are offering both now. When you have a pet cremated, their body is burned, right? And what's left is bone and some other stuff that is ground down into the ashes that you see. So aqua cremation is where they're put in a chamber and water, and I believe some chemicals are used to clean the bones, and then the bones are ground down into the ashes from there. So it is way better on the environment. Some people have a huge aversion to this, which to each their own, but my dog, my cat hated water. The thought of them being in water like that is unspeakable.
Wow. Yeah.
I've heard this because I'm a big fan of using water just because of the environmental impacts and things like that. But some people are highly opposed to it. So again, do your research. And usually they don't charge extra for it. They actually want to do it. So yeah.
So obviously this is a big decision to make. And I know some veterinarians that actually will address end of life stuff even when you bring them your first puppy, and maybe that's the time to talk about it. Eventually your puppy's going to grow up, going to get older, and they're going to pass away probably before you do. And so it's not bad for veterinarians who are listening to this, not a bad idea to bring up it's a sad topic, but to bring this topic up to people who have just acquired a pet and talk about, at some point you're going to have to make a big decision, and this is how to think about it, and then send them to our podcast, listen to this podcast and learn about this stuff. And have them prepare ahead of time, because it's going to be, anywhere between 6 and 21 years, depending on your pet, the breed and the species. So it's something to think about and plan ahead. If you want it done in a way that's going to satisfy how you imagine it to be, then plan ahead and have it all laid out, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and then the other option is burial at a pet cemetery. So if you want to bury your pet legally, there are pet cemeteries that exist in most major areas. It's the same thing as a human cemetery. You buy a plot. You can buy stacked plots, like if you're a crazy cat lady and you have 12 cats and you want them all in the same plot.
We love you, crazy cat ladies. We love you. We'll still help you.
Yes. No, we
admire your passion.
There's a crazy cat lady sitting next
I knew somebody was going to say that.
But if you want them all buried like that, you can actually go and buy your plot. So I have a plot in the local pet cemetery that is a stacked plot. It'll hold 3 pets. And the pricing for it is actually really reasonable, relatively speaking. It is more than cremation, but it's not anything crazy. So if you know that you're going to want your pet buried in a pet cemetery, go buy your plot now. Have it ready. And that way, when the time comes, you don't have to think about it.
You can also move the pet where you move, right?
Yes. So you can have, if you do move, this is a question that someone else that was with me asked, not me. I will not move my pet from one cemetery to another. But if you do move across the country and you want to move your pet to a different pet cemetery, they can be, I want to say explanted, but that's not the right word.
Transported.
Excavated? They can be taken out of the ground in their little coffin, because they have to be buried in a coffin. That's, how you get away with, these things, and can be transported and reburied somewhere else. Or I guess if they're part of a murder investigation and you need their remains. I'm kidding.
Oh my God.
Is she though?
I know. Well, I never know. There are scenarios. Well, thanks guys for tuning in. I hope this information was helpful. We know that this is a difficult discussion to have, but we hope to have clarified it more for you. And feel free to send me any questions you might have as well. This is Dr. Shadi Ireifej, Chief of Specialty, part owner, and staff surgeon for TrueCare for Pets. Thank you so much for listening in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.